In the Trump era, you probably know this by now, right? We all kind of know it. Always involved.
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, adequate notice has been given of tonight's meeting in the Hunterdon Star Ledger, and express times has been posted on the bulletin board by the main office of the Franklin Township School, sent to the Township Clerk and to all Board of Education members, and posted on the school website on March 11th, 2025. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Cummings? Mrs. Frondor? Mr. Giordano?
Here.
Mrs. Luciano?
Here.
Mr. Metz?
Here.
Mr. Norton?
Here.
Mrs.
LaQuinco.
Lakinko?
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum. Okay, so thank you everyone for coming tonight. We apologize that this couldn't have been held last week at our normal Board of Ed meeting. Unfortunately, the state sent us budget numbers that were incorrect. And so by the time they were sent the correct numbers, we had to reschedule the meeting. So thank you for coming. Mr. Kramer is out sick tonight. So Ms. Cheryl Boletto is filling in. So proceeding with the budget presentation and talk. Did he leave you? Anything? Okay. So we have been, there are two resolutions on the agenda tonight. There's option A, which is, that equates to the 7.55% tax levy. And then option B, I'm sorry, that's option 1. And then option 2 is the 9.35. All of the numbers, if you look at them, it's the same utilization of adjustments. So you have a 2% tax levy that districts are allowed to use. And then when healthcare costs increase an unexpected amount, we can receive a healthcare adjustment, which we did receive $103,588. Also an enrollment adjustment because our enrollment has gone up considerably in the past few years. That enrollment adjustment was $103,488. The adjusted bank cap on option 1 is for $176,000. And the only difference would be for option 2 is utilization of the banked cap for $299,000. The rest of the numbers do stay the same. So tonight's discussion really just focuses on the utilization of banked cap. So I would like to start by recognizing everyone in the room, but letting everyone know that the board recognizes how many people are affected by the budget decision. We have community members who are affected, we have staff members who are affected, and we have students who are affected. And it is our job to weigh all of those interests and make the best decision for the school and for the community. I would like to go ahead and I'll make a motion to move public comment up before the presentation, because I know that we've received a lot of questions, things such as that. If we want to go ahead and do public comment first, and then we can go into the board's comments, I think that would allow y'all to make your comments that you would like to. Can I get a voice vote to move public comment in front of presentation? Okay.
Second.
Everybody in favor?
No.
No? Okay.
I feel like if there's a presentation, sorry, I feel like if there's a presentation.
Yeah, could everybody please put their mics on? Thank you.
Sorry.
Just because it's not just
Yeah.
here, but the mics carry for,
I was just gonna say, if there's
Being
gonna be
live
a
streamed.
presentation, I feel like it would be very useful for the public to see it
Mm-hmm.
before they have their comments, because I don't think there's any more frame for some of them than what's in the agenda.
okay, so Dr. Clapper, do you want to speak to the difference between the two different?
Sure. Sean, you want to talk about how you and Mark came to the difference between 7.75 and the 9?
Sure.
So Mr. Kramer and I were working very heavily with the state to get corrected numbers. And one of the factors that played into having to have the meeting tonight was Chapter 44. So we worked with the state, and once we worked with the state and had got the corrected numbers, that gave the ability to be able to have the two different bank cap numbers tonight of the seven.
Explain what chapter 44 is, some of the
Sure.
audience doesn't know.
A few years ago, down at the state, the New Jersey State Health Benefits Plan, along with the Department of Education, changed the health benefits for public school employees and created a Chapter 44. And that was to help create a savings for taxpayers, as well as lower the contribution rates for employees who work for public school districts. And we have to submit a report on an annual basis to the state, every school district has to, showing if you achieved any savings. If a district does achieve savings and spends at adequacy or above adequacy level, you then have to return that money back to the taxpayer in the form of a reduction of the tax levy in the next school year. Originally, the state, what we had to do was report back to them corrected numbers, and that then gave back $123,000 roughly. And that is why now you have the option 1 or the option 2 of how much bank cap to use. So that is the premise of the Chapter 44.
We had to apply for waiver for that.
Wait, put your mic on.
Oh, sorry.
Well, the waivers that were applied for that are in both sets of resolutions and do not change is the health benefit waiver, and then there's the enrollment increase waiver. So those two waivers alone give you the ability to increase your taxes above 2% if the superintendent recommends it and the board approves it. Then on top of that, because of the chapter, then you have bank cap. And bank cap can be earned over a few years, and then you have up to 3 years to use it. The bank cap being used tonight was bank cap generated in the previous budget cycle. So you are still allowed to use it this year. That is the $299,000 number, give or take. So that is what the banked cap would be. So you're utilizing your enrollment waiver, health benefit waiver, and all banked cap if you choose the 9% increase. If you don't, any money not used will be rolled into banked cap that you can then use next budget cycle if you wish to do so. Did I answer what you wanted me to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so then can you discuss how administration got to 7.55 and 9.35, what the needs of the school are?
That was tough. We had to look very carefully about the positions that we needed to cut to get to 7.75 or 9. 7.75, do you want me to name the positions that we had to
Yes.
cut back? Okay, so we were looking then at the school resource officer. We were looking at taking away courtesy busing. We were looking at reducing the interventionists and reducing one resource teacher and one teacher, combining 2 grades together and eliminating that teacher. Did I forget anything? We have the list there. You have the list. I don't know. Those are the main ones, right? Yeah.
Clarity, were those? And for my clarity, the courtesy busing. Sorry. And I properly marked? Okay. Courtesy busing is not included in the vote for tonight at a 7.75. We're not cutting courtesy busing at a 7.75.
Mhm.
Due to the increase in state funding, so,
Right.
sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to, that was the, you
Yeah,
can
the
go
battle
ahead.
plan was
I
to
wanted to
eliminate courtesy
bring
busing
clarity.
to minimize educational impact. However, we got state funding increase that we weren't expecting, and that directly proportional went into keeping the buses. And for everyone who lives within 2 miles of the school. that was a decision we made. We thought it would create a lot of turmoil for the community and for parents if we eliminated that. So that was the one item of everything that's been discussed that has been guaranteed back in, but I'm willing to hear opinions.
And Dr. Glover, one point, you mentioned eliminating a teacher that would combine 2 grades. I think you meant combining 1 grade into 1 class.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Did I say
No
backward?
worries.
I apologize.
No problem.
Can I give some, I just want to talk about, if we're discussing the personnel cuts, right? There are cuts that had to have been made this year in order to balance next year's budget, but there have been cuts made along the way during this year in order to bring this year's budget within a breathing distance of being able to make our surplus need. So I'm going to list those off. While they aren't specific to what our BA is talking about, every one of those jobs have a downward effect on next year's budget. So for example, IT assistant, 1 full-time custodian, a part-time custodian, part-time grounds crew. These aren't jobs that were lost in order to balance the budget. Their loss of those affect next year's budget, if that makes sense. A behavioralist, positions that are on the board this year for next year's budget to be removed. Part-time interventionalist, full-time interventionalist, and the basic skill. What's that?
Please
I'm
let
sorry,
her discuss
was I-
personnel. I know, but we can't go into specifics of exactly which ones we're.
Oh,
going
no, what I'm trying to
That's-
do is illustrate to the community the massive cuts that need to be made in order to balance the budget. And Doctor, may I continue? Is what I'm saying not accurate?
Well,
She's the board president, so you should be asking her.
We're having a dialogue about cutting hundreds of tons of jobs here.
Okay, okay.
It's good for us.
If I may just finish the list so the community understands the cuts.
So the importance of not giving the specific positions is because none of this is finalized yet. We are a very small school. We don't have a staff of 300. If we list out the specific positions, it's not guaranteed that those will be lost. It's possible. That's why we are not giving the specific positions of what would be lost definitely, okay? That is, our role tonight is to determine what percentage increase this board is going to vote on. With that information, with that budget, the administration makes determinations on what will be changed, what positions will be lost. We are not voting here tonight on a specific position, anything like that, okay?
What we are trying to do is explain the need to the community.
And
There's
that's what she was
causation
doing.
here that these things need to happen in order for these things to make, the levies to make sense. And she's absolutely right. It's not everyone, but it's not my opinion that it's a fair majority of them. And that's to balance the budget. That's the point I'm trying to
Thank
convey
you.
to the
Dr.
community.
Calabro, would you please continue?
No, that's basically what's this one again?
Yes.
Oh, okay, the positions, and you're absolutely right. Until we know what that tax levy will be, I'm not gonna sit here before you and tell you exactly what positions will be cut. Because we are working as hard as we can to be creative and hopefully not cut any of them, staying within the tax levy and the budget that we have. So that's why I said to Mrs. Malenko, I really don't want to do that because I don't want you to walk away saying, oh, I just lost my job, because that's not true. I don't know where it's going to come out yet.
But again, just to have dialogue here, right? What's that? It's a fair majority of these. There's a mathematical certainty to these cuts that the community needs to be aware of. That's all. I just don't want to paint it with rosy color. And I don't think anyone should walk out of here thinking they're losing their jobs. I'm just trying to be
I was
realistic.
just gonna ask you, don't interrupt her.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let her finish her.
I'm sorry, Doctor.
Yeah, no, I'm basically, and the IT person is still with us. That position has not been cut yet.
Okay, that was different than the finance committee.
Right.
So tonight we're discussing the tax levy
Yes,
and voting on what tax levy will be moving
Correct.
forward with.
the percentage,
And then from there, we work out
exactly,
how to make that budget
Yes.
work within that.
Yes.
Okay.
correct.
Just want to confirm before.
Yes, so administration, they ran their numbers and they presented to us these 2 different resolutions. stating, this is how we can proceed, this is how we can keep a healthy school. Would you please discuss the difference between the two different resolutions as far as what that means for administration?
In terms of the money, I'm going to deflect that to Cheryl.
Okay, so if the board chooses to go with the 7% resolution versus the 9, the difference is roughly $124,000. If you choose the 7% resolution, then that $124,000 would roll back into banked cap, which would then be available for next school year if you choose to use it. If you pick the 9% tax increase, you are using the entire $124,000, that difference, and you would have no banked cap for next year. That would roll over. So number-wise, that's the effect of the $124,000 for any future planning when you talk about building the budget a year from now.
And banked cap can be rolled over for 3 years, or can be used for 3 years, correct?
Correct. So this was generated last budget cycle. So that's year 1. This is year 2. Next year would be the final
final
year
year.
you could use it.
Okay, so board, have any more questions for administration?
One more time.
The banked cap?
Bank cap will carry over to next year. Can we carry it forward again?
No, there's
No.
a state limitation of 3 years. So because it was generated in when you built the budget a year ago, that's year 1 you can use it. Then year 2 is this year, year 3 is next year.
Okay.
So you have up to next year to use it.
And then after that, and I want the community to hear this. Once it's gone, it's gone.
Correct.
It's gone. Okay.
That's whether it's used or not.
Correct.
Okay.
There's an expiration date. So next budget year cycle, a year from now, would be you have to use it then, or it's going to expire.
And then in the future, anything over the 2% would need to be done by bond referendum or any adjustments coming in the future via rises in healthcare costs or.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to raise taxes more than 2% and you have no bank cap, if you have another enrollment increase adjustment, if you have another health benefits cost increase adjustment, are really the 2 only avenues at that point.
That'll take us from.
Can you
So
put it- can you put
those
it
sorts
on?
of things would bring us from a 2% cap to a 2.5, a 3% cap, but those are very strictly, and they're written into statute.
Correct.
So it's, okay.
Yeah, actually, I was running some of the numbers before the meeting. So if you go up to the 9%, your 2% next year is roughly $150,000 of an increase of taxes. So if you want to have a little bit of a framework as you're thinking about next year while deciding tonight, your 2% tax, if you go to 9% tonight, you're looking at roughly $150,000 for next year on a 2% cap levy. So if both adjustments also came in around the same amount, then you would be looking at $350,000. All bank cap being used now.
I have a question. Mark explained this prior, but I don't think a lot of people were here. Can you explain the underlying surplus usage, the amounts and the dangers of that number growing too high?
Sure. So surplus is when you didn't spend all of your money from the prior year. So what would happen is if you keep building budgets using a large amount of surplus, you always have to regenerate that money. So think of it on a personal standpoint, say to pay your mortgage, you keep using your savings account. Well, once you go through your savings account, you have to figure out, where am I going to get this money now next year? So think of that as the concept of whenever someone says fund balance or surplus from a personal perspective. So obviously, surplus is great for, it's a one-time revenue, you should think of it as, and then you would love to use that money always for one-time expenses. However, also, the other thing you can do with surplus is when you know you have a financial projection out for a few years, and you know you need to start to, how do we generate new revenues? What other budget reductions may happen, or what costs may go away over a few years? You can use it as some short-term funding with a long-term financing plan. And that's your other way you can use surplus. It's not always a bad thing as long as you're not really relying on it to fund day-to-day expenditures long-term, and it's not a high material amount.
Can I ask you how much that amount was last year for this school?
Just give me 1 second. I have a report with me that I can give you that number. Tuition. Last year, what was used was $520,294. And the proposed budget before you tonight, regardless of which option you choose, is including $300,000.
But would I be correct in saying that we're in the second year of using that surplus? The year prior was 500 as well?
In 2023, 2024, $766,000 was used.
So it grew.
So it went from roughly 267,000 to 520,000 to 300,000 is the current proposed.
And that leaves us with how much in reserve at 300?
Actually, let me go on here. I can get a number from here. For the end of this school year, and again, these are not actuals, it has not been audited, the whole school year has not happened, but based upon the budget software from the state, it would leave the district with $250,000, which is the minimum that that the state wants you to have.
Inside of our reserves.
Right, because there's what the state wants you to reserve, which would be that 250, and then there's like what they call excess surplus. They make you budget that unless you put things into reserves at the end of the year. But again, the $250,000 is only a projected number. This is not audited numbers, and because it can't include all your expenses yet this year, because the school year hasn't closed.
If those funds aren't applied into the surplus that go to the following year, where would they go?
By June 30th of every year, a school district, a board has to approve a resolution if you would like any anticipated fund balance or surplus to go into capital reserve. There's a few reserves you can do: capital reserve, maintenance reserve, there's a tuition reserve. And you would elect to do that as a board. The superintendent would recommend that. You would have to approve that as a board. Then you get all when your auditors come in, they'll audit all your revenues, all your expenditures, and then they'll tell you what your actual true audit fund balance is. And then a decision is made of the actual amount to go into that reserve, but you can't go over the amount the board allowed prior to June 30th.
Copy that. One final question too. You might not have the information in front of you. Have our reserves gone down over the past 5 years, proportional to where they were prior? Because if we're using surplus to spend for the next year's schooling, it wouldn't be going in. If we were using surplus to pay for the next year's schooling, those funds wouldn't go into capital reserves.
Right. Well, what happens is, correct.
Okay, thank you.
When it comes to your question of reserves, what I can tell you, I can give you the last 2 years. So in 2023, so on July 1st, 2023, your capital reserve was $858,000 roughly. And then in the beginning of 2024, 2025, it was 1.1 million roughly, a little higher. So I can tell you that. And you're using capital reserve in this budget proposed tonight for $225,000, regardless of tax levy. Tonight, you're using the proposal, it's part of the resolutions, to put a new sports shed and put in a new elevator, and that's $225,000. So what you're authorizing in some of these resolutions is you're authorizing the withdrawal of capital reserve for $225,000 for those two specific projects.
Thank you.
Sure.
And the purpose of the new elevator is because ours is not working, therefore we are not ADA compliant.
Right, and the elevator is so old, they don't even make the parts for it anymore. They've tried to get some parts and you just can't get them anymore.
Okay. Can you, I'm sorry, just give it a second. There you go.
Can we reconcile the 300,000 that was talked about earlier with the 225 that was just discussed?
Do you mean the 300,000 of fund balance that's being used?
That's correct.
Okay, so the
Just
three,
for the community, I want to make sure that this was a very detailed conversation. I was hoping that we might be able to reconcile these numbers. These are big numbers, and I would
Okay.
like to explain how they differ.
sure. So the $300,000 is what is proposed in the budget tonight to be utilized as fund balance. Fund balance is allowed to be used to support your general operations. You can also use it for other capital projects if you wish to, but this is being used to fund general operations in your budget. Capital reserve. Capital reserve is a mechanism that any school district in New Jersey can use upon recommendation of the superintendent and board approval to purposely put monies aside for capital improvements. A new roof, you need a new boiler. For instance, a new elevator is the main project in this budget. And those funds can only be used for capital projects. You cannot use those for daily operations. So that is the differential between the two sources of funds and what they're allowed to be used for. Does that help?
It does
Oh,
for
okay.
me. I hope it does for the community. We talked about two different funds during the conversation that was just had, and I wanted to make sure we differentiated between those two different funds and laid a line in the sand, if you will, for our community members. That's all.
Sure. Any other questions?
Can you speak, Dr. Culliver, can you just speak to what the school will see? What's the difference going to be between the two different options?
One will affect us much more than the other one will. We will not have some of the programs that, we would like to keep. And so, it's a difference between maybe losing one position and losing two or three of them, whether they be full or part-time.
So losing educational programs that we currently have?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Sorry, to speak 1 second. I just want to kind of explain.
What I feel is that I try to simplify it for folks as dumb as me, let's just say. The issue that the school is facing isn't just growth in certain certain line items, transportation, special education, salary growth. That is what it is. That's like gravity. There's nothing that a board of education can do about it. people who are, we've discussed this, me and Caroline have discussed this at length. When it comes to special education, those costs are mandated. That what needs to if they need it, they get it, that's the end of story. So if those expenses are growing, then we're doing the right thing. When it comes to transportation, that has to do with capitalism. We are in the middle of nowhere. We're kind of on an island here. We're not in Philadelphia. There's not 7 different busing companies that we can get comp bids off of. So the one company who runs this town, they set the price. And the cost of a bus full of 30 gen ed students costs the same as a bus of 1 special needs student. That's our burden. Excuse me, that's not our burden, that's our duty. When it comes to salaries and salary increases, that's because teachers and staff have been added in order to address needs that are going on and improve our educational performance. We're not just keeping up with those expenses with this. On the other side of it is what we were discussing with the surplus necessity. Every year, we need to have $500,000 left over, which means spending freezes, hiring, whatever, I don't know what they do in order to make it happen. But instead of spending that money, we need that exact same amount of surplus the next year to make that money has to carry from one year over to the next year. So it's not technically being spent. We're not raising, so with that being said, we have to raise the levy in order not only to support our staff and keep as many people as we humanly can, but it's a 2-prong attack where we are attacking the surplus necessity. Because if the surplus need continues to grow and grow, the school will fall under its own weight of mathematics. Again, my opinion, I could be wrong in one way or the other, but that's what I'm trying to convey to the community here. This is not a one-time budget balancing. We're trying to underfund, we're trying to backfill the business model of the school so it will stay here for the next 10 years. If we ignore those needs and don't raise the levy and bring up, because we are so far back, we talk about, again, opinion, when you talk about the Raritan-Flemington vote that just failed, the referendum, our needs proportional, if it's sized down to our size, our needs are 3 times their need. And we don't save every staff member. So when I look at the community, when we're talking about what we're discussing here, this is the first stage of trying to save the school's business model. And I just wanted, so I'm trying to explain it a different way so we can explain it. It's not just about keeping up with services. It's about making the business model of the school make sense again. And you guys have seen what we put out to the public about the expenditure growth over the past 5 years. Expenditure growth have gone up $3.5 million. That's not, and there's no teachers driving Bentleys out of the parking lot. There's not espresso makers in the faculty rooms. This is the reality of the situation here. The only way to fix the business model is to fund it with a cash infusion and limit services and staff and try to minimize that as much as humanly possible. But I'm sorry, you got to forgive me on your name. Cheryl, what Cheryl is trying to explain about the surplus, if that keeps growing and we don't attack that right now with the capped bank that we have, the Board of Education will not be able to fix. Am I wrong on that? If we lose the ability of our bank cap, we won't be able to vote to fix that anymore. It grows beyond our ability to even try roping it in.
I'm not mic'd, but I do want to be very clear. Yeah.
So I think, part of what we're both saying is long-term planning.
Yes.
So part of the long-term planning is dealing with the surplus number. And it's also what every Board of Education is going through right now, or the majority, probably 98% of them is right now the state only allows a tax increase of 2%. Costs have gone up in all different areas in school budgets, way over 2%. Salaries, health benefits, transportation costs, utility costs. I mean, some of the expenses you are paying personally, a school pays them too. And what has happened is the 2% cannot keep up with the expenses long-term. In addition, when it comes to the school district, Franklin School District, you've also seen, I think, over the last 5 years, some changes. And some of those changes have led also to an increase in costs. You now have an ELL teacher. You have a demographic shift where that you're mandated to teach now ESL. So as these things continue, costs are coming. And so that's why, it's fiscally responsible, a decision, whether you go to the 7 or the 9, you're recognizing, at least as a board, that, you do have to go above the 2% because you want to maintain the school district here. I mean, you have a very nice school district. I mean, all the teachers are wonderful that I've met so far. And, everybody comes to work and they do the best. They really work with the kids well. And I think it's great that your discussion is actually 7 or 9% to see what to keep in the school district. Because you do have a great group here. So it's nice to see a board recognizing that as well.
One more.
Colleen, did you want to go?
No, my point was already made.
One thing I wanted to add what you were saying, and to add
Context to the community of why is this small place getting so expensive? And it has to do with scale. It's the same reason a Lowe's can sell a light bulb for $1, but Ted's Hardware sells it for 10. We do not benefit from any sort of scale. There's not multiple schools within our district. There's nowhere to shift line items. So the thing that makes us great by being a small school is the thing that is weighing us down when it comes to financials, because there's an argument to be made that a school of 300 costs exactly the same as a school of 600, but it loses all the weight of those schools along the way. It loses the weight of all the students that they don't have. So we would be in a better position if we had more students, if the place was bigger. And quite frankly, it costs more to run a small business than it does proportionally to run a large business. Just my opinion. I'm trying to explain why it feels like the community is getting hit and residents are getting hit so hard for it. We don't have a lot of people to tax. There's no municipal funding outside of the property taxes. So that's why everyone feels it, this side of the room. That's why you feel it so much more than anyone else, because there's only 1,200 houses to tax.
Yeah, there's no gradables, unfortunately.
There's, yes, and
The other thing
yeah.
you need to consider also is your homes are beautiful, by the way, because I take the back roads every day to work. And the first thing I say is, who wants to mow these lawns? They're so beautiful. But in order for people to want to move here, they're going to have children because the houses are a nice size. And the first thing they're going to ask about is, how's the school system? Because if the schools aren't good, they won't come. So it behooves you, in my opinion, to keep your schools up and in pristine condition as you can, with a great reputation, which you have, so you can sell your house. And that's really important, because you don't have a flagship school, which is your high school. You only have your little elementary. And in order for your value of your home to stay up, the value of your school has to stay up as well.
Okay. All right, so moving on to public comment. All comments should be directed to the board president. The board will not respond to complaints from and to school personnel unless the chain of command has been followed without satisfaction. Furthermore, the board cannot respond to any complaints from the public directed at any district employee or student, as the board must protect each employee's and each student's right to privacy. Those wishing to share comments during this portion of the meeting are asked to sign the register at the podium and state their name, place of residence, and group affiliation if applicable. Public comment shall be concise and to the point, shall not contain abusive, defamatory, or obscene language. Each speaker will be given up to 3 minutes.
There's nothing to sign. A sheet. I'll just make believe.
press.
Elizabeth Basile, 16 Upper Kingtown. I had a few, we're just doing agenda items, correct? No, okay. On the agenda, it stated that Superintendent Calabro had educational priorities. So I'm curious if she could share what is her vision to make sure we don't lose with any of these tax cuts or people cuts or whatever. It's also, I don't think this is on, but it's also stated in the agenda that the budget and tax levy increase is to support educational priorities. It outlines that $176,344 increase to the base budget is for the purpose of maintaining academic programs, educational services, etc. The board stated last week that there was probably going to be cuts to what's going on in school. I just want to know, will the recent addition of the Class 3 officer, since he kind of came in late, be eliminated so that funds instead could go to support education as it had been stated as a priority in this agenda? They answered that question. I also wanted to know what professional services is included in the $460,000. It says other administrative services cost. I also wanted to kind of just throw out there, as I was running some numbers, the tax levy total from 2024, 2025 was $7,476,675. And that included the general fund and the debt service fund. So Fund 10 and Fund 40. This year, the total is about $7,476,510. The general fund is 7 million, blah, blah, blah. But the debt service fund is only 124,000. So in essence, you're going to make up the bond expiration or money that you were making on the old bond by this increase. So even though you're going to get an increase percentage-wise, we may not necessarily feel it as residents. Let's see. I also wanted to know why doesn't the board look at the surprise extra state funding to keep with assisting education and look at the busing? Because I don't know how many students actually take the bus to and from the school for the courtesy busing, just to see maybe use the money to keep the teachers and or education where we want it to be. Is the new storage shed wanted or needed, and could it be postponed? I think you answered the elevation repair has to be done. And then I also wanted to know what makes up anticipated revenue and sources, because that seems to be a pretty big no.
Did you steal the pen?
No, I took my own.
Is there a pen I can use? Hi. Absolutely, no, I don't steal.
I'll do the next one.
Hi, Brad Bank. Got it. Hi, Brad Bankin, 60 Upper Kingtown Road, neighbors with them. We moved here everyone's got their individual story, so this is my first time coming, and by Matt's comments, it seems like maybe teachers on this side, residents on this side. Number one, thank you, teachers. You guys have a thankless job, and we have a third grader, first grader, and pre-K, and we moved here 4 years ago from Connecticut, and we are very, very happy. So thank you for doing your jobs, teacher. Board of Ed, thank you as well. So we moved here. We didn't have any kids in the school system because they were all too young. So we got to know a lot of people. I realized that There's a lot of people that are retired that don't want tax increases. And then you have a lot of people that have kids in the school that are gonna basically just want as much money to go to the school. So that's that balancing act, right? The one thing I would say is I am in support of keeping the class 3 officer. The one thing would be the study from 2 years ago. I believe the study was in 2003, May or April-ish. And I believe out of the community members, 60% said yes, 40% said no. I bet you if you polled people that have kids in the school, not kids in the school, probably is gonna shake out around 60-40. But I would go to the other two parts of that study was 80% of the teachers said that they felt safer with an officer in the school. And I believe the middle school's kids, there were 93% of them said that they'd feel safer. So if I want to tie that into, everyone's got their own backgrounds. I had a 16-year career in finance from institutional and retail side. I have a background in economics and statistics. And the one thing I'd love to talk to anybody about exactly what Dr. Calabro said, that I would just consider if you're looking at if you're moving to Hunterdon County and you want to go to North or Voorhees, if you look at the test scores, it's kind of Union or Franklin are at the top. And that can be debatable. I know there's probably some people giving me staring eyes behind me. But if you look at that and you say, okay, well, over the next 10 years, which school do I want my kids to go to? All right. Do you want the one that is cutting people and cutting staff to save a couple extra dollars on taxes? Well, that's going to affect the housing prices. There's a high correlation there. So I would just think, throw it out there. If you're worried about the taxes, rip the Band-Aid off this year, take the big tax increase this year, and then that way we can, because what's going to keep the schools ratings high? It's the teachers. So if we want the teachers to be happy and safe at school, that's going to make them teach better, which is going to raise the test scores. I'm probably getting to 3 minutes. So the last one would be special education and social services here are phenomenal. I've heard from a lot of different people. We've had our kids in classes where they've got other kids in the class got help, and it makes us feel awesome about that. One thing I would consider too, as you're looking at the budget, I know this is a hard one, but have we ever considered having like a gifted and talented? So if we want to raise the scores, right now we have a lot of resources going into helping that bottom. Have we ever thought about maybe trying to help the top as well to try to get those resources? So if your $500,000 house goes up 10% or down 10%, that's $50,000. I believe the tax round numbers is going to be $3,000 per taxpayer. So if you're worried about I get it, and I'm probably getting some stares from some of the retirees, but would you rather pay $3,000 for the next 10 years and pay $30,000, or have your potentially, if the school downgrades and we have to lay off a lot of people, the test scores are going to go with it, and your housing value is going to go down, and a 10% move is $50,000. So just think about the risk reward over time and compounding. Sorry I took my time. Nice to meet all of you. I'll talk to anybody. I think we all need to smile and just have a good time. Thank you.
Michelle, do we have any numbers around the actual tax impact with either 75? Because I know it's offset largely by our expired debt service.
I don't have that. I can see it, I'll get it from Mark.
Can we relatively comfortably say that statement of it'll be largely offset by our expiring debt service? Yeah.
But I'm sorry, because I just want to make sure everyone understands what he was saying there.
Yeah, so
Just so everyone, to explain it to the folks.
we're paying off a bond.
I'm going to ask that we please
Save it
go
till
back
later.
to
This is
public.
public time.
This
Well,
is
I think it
Yo,
might be
Let
important,
you,
important for them to
fine.
know this in case that spurs more comment. So, the only comment I want to make is largely the 7.7 or 9.5, whichever route we go, is offset by our expiring debt service. Now, that does obviously leave something on the table because that debt service potentially could pay for our HVAC improvement, which would then represent a incremental increase in taxes. But for this year, as far as in terms of your property taxes going up, it'll be largely offset by that expiring debt service. And I hope that's clear. Sorry.
Sorry, the floor is yours, apologies.
That's fine. I've been, Diane Burgess, Locust Grove Road. I've sat in your position 45 years here in town. I've sat in your position. I had 3 children go through the school system, 2 fully, 1 partially. I've sat on the township committee for multiple years. So I understand many of the issues. However, I hear Superintendent say we'll have to cut positions. I'd like to hear more information, which ones will be cut. Also, I'd like to hear more, and believe me, I laughed at the question about a gifted and talented. When my kids were here, there was gifted and talented. Again, when my kids were here, there were more kids. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that, like I kind of chuckle, but so hopefully you haven't done away with gifted, talented. But the questions become, where are we perhaps, because we are a small school, and this is something I've advocated for many, many years, where are we sharing services? Where are we trying to combine? Maybe we have, I don't know, an art and a music teacher who does 2 things. I mean, I'm not an educator, so I don't know. But what are we doing to try to maintain the level, but think outside the box? Believe me, I understand that's difficult at times, but what kinds of things are you doing within the school system to think outside the box, to change the model, to perhaps better serve all of our students? And I understand the whole special ed situation, and that's going to vary year to year. You don't know who's coming in, who's going out. I understand. So those are things that, like you said, Matt, are outside your control. But what are you doing to anticipate some of those things and to perhaps think differently to better serve the community? That's all right.
Good evening. Colin Cecil, 20 Laurelton Trail. One of the prior members of the public talked about ripping the Band-Aid off with the 7.75 or 9% increase. Last year we had a 6% increase. This year we're having another increase in excess of 7%. We had a $2.8 million bond referendum that passed. To Mr. Metz's point, that means we are getting relief because of the debt repayments are expiring. But your own long-range forecasting plan talked about a $20 million requirement of investment for the school. So any relief we are getting on the debt repayment has to only be temporary, because we've got to anticipate a further bond referendum to pay for the investments that this school desperately needs. The question that I would ask, we had a 6% last year. We ripped the Band-Aid off again this year with another 7%. What is the level of confidence we have that we will not be back here next year with yet another large increase being requested? And is there any way this can be anticipated? Because from the external side, it does not seem reasonable that we should have a 6% followed by a 7% without any indication to the community that the future requirement for taxation increases are still there and highly probable. Thank you.
Hi, guys. Before I even start, I want to ask you, I am not a resident of Franklin Township, but my son is a student here, a tuition student. So are you okay with me? Great. Appreciate it, you guys. I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about special education. And while I know that you're not going to be making these decisions right now, I acknowledge that. I just want to make sure that some of the things that we see as parents in the special education program are acknowledged. My name is Maria. Some of you may know my son. His name is Ethan. He goes here. He's in the empty classroom. Oh my God, I'm so sorry about the notes, guys, but I'm at the age where I don't remember why I went into the kitchen, so now I have to write everything down. But look, I sit on many boards, disability boards. I work in the realm of disability. I've done fellowships in disability. I'm very passionate about disability. I've been in your shoes. I know you have to make financial decisions that are not always popular and that may compromise your ideals in some places. But what's really important is what you said about you have to do certain things, it's your duty, right? What I want you guys to know is that it's not true that all special education programs are created equal. So yes, while you may have to do certain things, there are things about our special education program here that are more efficient because of the way that it's run. My son is significantly disabled. He is here because my school district could not support him appropriately in his own district. Because I'm the parent that I am, I went to due process. It cost our school district a lot of money. It cost us a lot of money. And it cost our school district even more money to have to pay us back for that, okay? What that means for me, I live in Warren County. Farther that you go, north and west in New Jersey, the more underserved the population of disability is. In my area, there are not good support services for these children. Years ago, my older son went to Douglas Developmental because that's the option for people who have children with disabilities. You send them to a private school. This is sending kids in upwards of an hour to 2 hours in a bus because there's nothing by us. Fast forward, I can tell you when my son was there, his tuition at Douglas was around $100,000 and his busing with a nurse, which was required, was about the same. Imagine how happy we were to hear that in Hunterdon County, right, there's suddenly this pocket of excellence in Hunterdon County and it's Franklin Township, and that Lord Marchese put together this program, which was went above and beyond and is really an amazing program for people with disabilities. Sorry. This program to me offers a solution for you guys if you're talking about, if your administration is talking about trying to be creative. My son is a tuition kid in this district. He's a tuition kid because this is such a phenomenal program. You have other tuition kids in this district. They are paying you to come. That is unheard of in a public district. It is not a lateral move that people would usually make. You're usually going to private schools. I know that's my time. I just want to say to you guys, please do your due diligence. I really believe that you have the type of program here that can create revenue for your school. You guys should be promoting it in the north and west of here. You guys should also know that this program doesn't work without all of the components. You cannot piecemeal it. You cannot just take little parts of it. You cannot take away the staff. That's amazing. And I just ask that you guys think about that and think about what you would be able to do if you guys marketed this program as a revenue builder. Thanks.
Hello. I'll just sign in first. I apologize. I'm also an out of district resident. My son also attends the MD program here at Franklin Township, and I don't want to belabor a point. I won't even take up the whole 3 minutes. I just want you, sorry, my name is Meryl Senyu. I'm a Union Township resident. My son is also an out-of-district student, so Union is paying for him to go to, again, this wonderful multiple disabilities program that we have here at Franklin. I just want you to make you aware that there are several of us parents from this program here today, as well as all of the wonderful staff members from that program here today, because of just how concerned we are about possible cuts to this program. I just want to highlight Mrs. Leary's points of every component of that program being so integral to our children's success here at Franklin. And again, we know that we are not here to talk about specific cuts, and so I will not belabor that, but just to really make a plea to understand that if the idea is to get creative with language in the IEPs to see what can we combine, what can we take out, what can we kind of put together or get away with in order to be compliant still with state requirements. We just want you to know that there are human children here who actually every single one of those changes affect them so significantly. And the way the program is run today is working for our kids wonderfully. And we are very much concerned about any cuts changing their day-to-day life. So I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm Marissa Hettenbach, Sydney Road. So I'm a teacher in Hunterdon County. I've been teaching for close to 15 years. I've been to a lot of board meetings. I mentioned this just to say that some of the experience that I have behind me with the questions and comments that I share tonight. One, the tax levy, so 7% and 9%, you should know what positions would be cut based on the 7 and the 9, and that is something we would like to know tonight. I've heard some of the positions that may be eliminated are an interventionist. You know, those are students that help, those are teachers who help students get identified in a larger classroom if they need more supports, either individualized or in a group setting, that can't be provided by a classroom teacher. So what is leading to the decisions to eliminate positions like this? And what are you going to do to fill the gaps? I do not understand how less support for vulnerable learners supports best practice. You talk about how your standardized test scores are low now, but you want to cut learning support for kids who need it the most. A question I have is, will the board start to consider moving their executive session to the beginning of a Board of Education meeting rather than having it at the end or in the middle? Last week, the board came back from executive session at almost 10 p.m. and voted to remove the Director of Special Services, among other personnel changes, and hire a new Director of Special Services. None of the information was made public before the decisions were made. The district that I work in holds their executive session prior to the start of a board meeting. It ensures the public comment takes place before the board votes to take action on items that evening. Many times the board has changed their mind on issues that they plan to take action on once they realize the community has strong feelings about the choices they're going to make. My district board agendas are very black and white. Why can't this board do the same? Parents should not have to hear about changes that you have made that affect our kids after the fact. Recording and live streaming board meetings is keeping up with modern communication. It is not only the transparency that parents seek. Families delete public meeting notice emails that say nothing of substance. Unless you already attend board meetings or actively pay attention, families have no idea what's going on. Parents should not have to work hard to find out important information that affects their kids. A flyer in the March 14th edition of the paw print has the Board of Ed meeting dates. Underneath it, it says, quote, "Your voice matters. Attending FTS Board of Ed meetings is a powerful way to stay informed and actively communicate the decisions that shape our students' education. Your insights, questions, and feedback make a difference. We encourage you to join us at the upcoming meetings to share your thoughts, stay connected with the school community, and help us continue to create a positive impact for all students," end quote. There is no way that you're making a positive impact for all students when you aren't being transparent with families. If you're not making a positive impact on students when you cut teaching jobs and intervention services that support student learning. You're not creating a positive impact for students when you plan to fire teachers and remove support services. Whoever maintains the Franklin Township School Board Ed Facebook page shut off comments yesterday after a gentleman posted a question in regards to tonight's special meeting. It was a very basic inquiry. I went back to see if he received a response. I found that all comments were shut off on the page. By censoring the community's ability to comment or contribute, you risk driving people to create unofficial groups where Board of Ed inclusion and oversight will be non-existent. When I wrote an email to the board last week, my initial email was sent to everyone on the board. The response I received only included the president, vice president, and superintendent. I don't understand why. To me, when you exclude everybody else, that also lacks transparency. When was the last time the district sent out a climate survey to family, staff, and middle grade students? Do you anticipate that you will be doing this anytime soon? Climate surveys help identify strengths, challenges, and areas for improvement. Since board transparency is lacking and we currently have an interim superintendent, it would be a great time to collect some feedback from the community. Lastly, I was wondering if any of the board members have ever been trained or will be trained at some point to learn more about special education. During some open board discussions, I've unfortunately heard some pretty ignorant comments regarding neurodiverse children, such as that children's behaviors will change if children don't eat food that contains food dye. Therefore, behaviors would improve and the district would not need to hire as many paraprofessionals. Most educators know that behavior is a form of communication. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think anybody that's currently on the board currently is an educator or is a former educator. I would highly suggest that the board collectively educate themselves about special education in order to better understand and recognize the needs of neurodiverse learners, as well as behavioral and mental health challenges that affect children. Please also understand the addition of more special education students is not a reason why test scores are down. I'm willing to bet money that if you cut interventionists and teachers, it's certainly not going to help matters. And not having a certified library media specialist to run a proper literacy program and teach information literacy skills to students, especially when the state has signed legislation that will require New Jersey schools to teach information literacy education, doesn't help either. So to benefit all Franklin Township students, I ask the board to please put student learning first and foremost always, to not cut positions that directly affect children, and to start providing the community with real transparency that we rightfully deserve regarding the education of our children. Thank you.
Hi, James Wachowski, 243 Cherryville Road. I was kind of replaying in my head different budget meetings that I sat in previous years. And I can remember, 2 or 3 years ago, Dr. Diaz set up here and the start of the meeting was basically going through a laundry list of shared services that the school had. And I'm not even sure we have any today. I know a lot of the major ones are gone. I'm wondering, has the board thought at all how that affects the budget as we presently sit here? And are we trying to find other places we can share services with? We're a small school. It's important. Thank you.
have a long name, sorry. My name is Peter Goslink. I live at 18 White Bridge Road here in Pittstown. I think I just wanted to bring some information to light for the board, and you brought up the busing service. My kids were very, very excited to get onto the bus. And when their first year went well, driver was great. Second year, first day, new bus driver nearly ran over my kid as she was getting off the bus. Brought it to Dr. Diaz, brought it to some of the staff members. He was there the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. And we started talking to some of our neighbors on White Bridge. And yeah, the driver was missing stops, dropping kids off at wrong locations. And a couple of kids got into some pretty nasty fights on the bus. Bus driver did nothing. I know bus services are very, very important to a lot of people that both parents have to work, can't necessarily drive kids to work. It is great service. I have great memories, sort of the bus. But if there was, I really just wanted to bring that information to light because I'm not sure if that information really got to y'all. So if there was a place to sort of look towards cuts, busing might be something that you might want to take a look at. Thank you.
My name is Victoria Fahey. Wrote my down. I'm a concerned parent and I feel like I'm about to cry, so we can just do that together.
I was about to sneeze, interrupt you, and I was going to say, I'm about to sneeze, hold on a moment, and it all just came out. Anyway, that was embarrassing, and it's on video, so we're all just gonna go with that being on video.
I'm a concerned parent and advocate for my daughter, who is a student in the special education program at Franklin School. Like many other parents, I've been deeply grateful for the exceptional care, dedication, and expertise demonstrated by the staff and educators in the special education department. Their commitment to our children has made a profound difference in our lives, and the current program has been nothing short of wonderful. I forgot to mention, I'm also an out-of-district parent, so my daughter pays tuition to come to this school. However, I'm deeply troubled by the recent actions and proposed changes by the new budget proposal. Has come to my attention that their efforts to make sweeping changes to the special education department, changes that seem to disregard the needs and well-being of our children. I'm so sorry. As a parent, I find this approach not only concerning, but also discriminatory towards our students with special needs who thrive under the current system. As parents, we entrust our children to this district with the expectation that their unique needs will be met with understanding and expertise. And the current special education program and team has been a lifeline for our families. And any changes to it must be made with utmost care and consideration for the students who depend on it. The board appears to prioritize expediency over the well-being of our children, and this is unacceptable. I urge the board to take these actions to consider. To one, halt any changes to the special education program until a thorough review can be conducted with input from parents, educators, and specialists. And also to ensure transparency and collaboration in any decisions affecting our children's education, particularly in the special education department. Our children deserve nothing less than a supportive, inclusive, and effective educational environment, and the current program has proven to be just that. The program under Mrs. Marchese has been wonderful, and if there's a majority of the students in the special needs department who don't feel that the program no longer meets their expectations, we could also leave, and that could affect the budget as well. We could find other schools to go to if the program now isn't kept up. I think it's very important for everyone to consider. Thank you.
My name's Frank Toda. I live at 16 Upper Kingstown Road. I just have one question. After listening to the people who came up, particularly Ms. Burgess, as well as a couple of other people, they asked about specific cuts. And I know that there's an apprehension, obviously, to speak about specific cuts because you may not know what those cuts are. You have to make that decision based upon whether it's a 7% or 9% increase. My sense is that 9% makes sense. I would be an advocate for that. I have no children in the school, never have, never will. But I think that it's actually smart, as people have made the comment, to rip the Band-Aid off, because having come to several of these meetings, you know, terms like the school is hurting, we have financial problems that have spanned prior years that have been not covered up, but a Band-Aid has been put over those, and now we're living the reality of having to have sizable increases. Next year, you won't be able to increase the number if you go to 9% this year, unless some extraordinary things happen with the number of kids or whatever the mathematics is. So I don't understand why you would wait. The question I have that I think you can answer, if you can't tell us what the cuts actually are, what is the actual number that if you went to 9%, that you have a gap of what the expenses would be versus what you have money to pay for? Because that would at least inform people to understand that if you said, we're going to have a $250,000 gap, they will understand that if a resource officer costs $65,000 and a teacher costs $70,000, they can start to do the math and understand what kind of positions we're talking about. But right now, it just sounds like it's very nebulous as to what it is that we're really talking about. The budget's complicated, but it would be really useful to know at 9%, how much money do you need to still come up with in terms of savings? Thank you.
Brett Palmer, Wolverton Road, Pittstown. I want to, touch on a couple of things people said. I also think we need to rip the Band-Aid off. I mean, I filled in on the board last year. I definitely got to see everything that's going on. It's a big Band-Aid. It's got to get ripped off. I also want to say I hate taxes. I really hate taxes. But we don't have a choice here. But we do have a choice to not raise taxes next year and the year after that and the year after that and the year after that. I think it's easy to rip the Band-Aid off and say, that's done. Let's just move on. But if we don't continue to look at everything every day, every meeting for going forward, we're going to be here again. We're going to be here again. So I think the community seems to say, let's rip the Band-Aid off, because we all want good schools. We want, and we have a great school. We have great teachers. We have a great school. We want to keep it. But we can't keep doing it to 9% or 6% or whatever. So I think it is important that when we rip the Band-Aid off, or if you guys decide to rip the Band-Aid off, you continue to work again and again and again. I mean, I know Mr. Kramer is not here right now. He's doing fantastic work of trying to fix what was broken for years. But we need to keep trying that and not just say the Band-Aid's off and let's move on. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Sandra Marzo, 227 Pittstown Road. I also hate taxes. And my kids aren't here any longer. A couple of their teachers are in the back row, though. And I mean, there's just so much I wanted to say, so much I could say. I I've been to enough of these meetings, and I'm just going to be blunt. I don't have a lot of trust in this board because I've been to enough of these meetings. I am trying very hard to be open-minded with you all this year because there is better communication. But Mr. Kramer's not here tonight. And so, of course, like my gut is like pinging. I'll be honest. And I was here last week and it was all cuts, 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 cuts. Either way, I'm a former teacher and you cut the staff, your test, and you already have struggling test scores. It's going to be that much harder to improve test scores. I remember hearing last week that teachers were starting to look at old tests to help students with that. When I taught many years ago, that was part of our regular teacher in-service. I mean, like, and I'm not trying to say, like I said, there's so much I could say. Just, you need to support the teachers better. I know a lot of people are in favor of the SRO. And I'm not saying that kids don't deserve and teachers don't deserve to feel safe. They do. But at some point, like, you got to pick. Like, if his salary is equivalent to approximately 2 teachers, what are you going to trade? What are you going to trade? You got to make a choice, honestly. And that's really what you got to do. Like, when it comes down to it. And yes, I'm sure the teachers want to feel safe, but they want their job. They want their job. And parents want their kids in a decent class size, and they want a good education. And it seems like y'all are circling a financial drain here. Again, I've been to enough of these meetings. I've heard enough stuff. Like, you don't want to have to close the school. Are you just slowing down the speed at which you're circling the drain and you're going to have to close the school eventually? Or are you going to regionalize, but the regionalization plan sounded crappy? Does that mean you need to go to the state for another study with more districts? Like, what's the solution? And I feel for y'all. You're in a tough spot, and I could use way more colorful language than that, but I'm being good. I'm being good.
Good evening. I don't have a prepared speech, but yes, my name's Kenneth Mandoli, Mandoli, 310 Sydney Road for 34 years. And in addition to that, I have 40 years of law enforcement experience. So when I hear about cutting the SRO position, to be honest with you, you can have an armed guard for half the money that you're spending for an SRO, and it's still going to be the same deterrent as a uniformed police officer. The deterrent is happening out on that street with a marked police car. If somebody plans on doing something and they see that marked car, they're not coming into the school. They're going to go on to another school where they don't see a marked car. So maybe there's savings there that you could possibly look at. But I'm a firm believer you should have some type of security here at the school. My other question is about the enrollment that's constantly going down. I was the director of public safety in this town for 7 years. And I was here when they were building the addition. And I was here every day speaking with the contractors and some of the staff at that time. And they told me that because I said, wow, this is really a big addition. And they said, yeah, it's bigger than what we need right now. But we're looking to the future because there's going to be growth in this town. Folks, again, I told you I've been here 34 years and there's very little growth that has taken place. And the building department in this town takes care of that. They went from 3-zone to now 7-acre zone. Builders don't want to come here if they have to put one house on 7 acres. So if you're looking to the future and you think you're going to get more kids here, I don't see them coming. And I can speak from my heart because I've been here a long time and I'm still waiting. So when you're going to cut positions, please just keep in mind, have some type of armed guard here, even though it isn't a police officer. And I think you'll get the same safety feeling. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Comment? Okay, there are some things that we can address right now. Okay, shared services. That's a common theme. Shared services, yes, over 5 years ago, that's when we started to break into the shared services. We were under the impression, my time's up. Sorry, gotta go. I wasn't on the board at that time, but it's my understanding that Franklin entered into shared services thinking, we'll share services, we'll save costs. Over the past few years, we did many analyses about shared services, and the ones that we were utilizing, we found that we were not getting the benefit of the bargain. We were paying 50% of a salary for an employee, not just one employee, but for every employee that we shared with Union. That's who we shared services with. Union has 2 schools. They have more than twice as many students as we do. Therefore, the employee that we were paying 50% for, sometimes they were stated that they worked 2.5 days, exactly 50%, but from what we found, it was not, we were not benefiting from it and we did not receive all the services that we should. This administration has been working very hard to make every change possible so that we don't have to lose teachers, so we don't have to lose staff, so we don't have to lose programming. I have to give much credit to the administration because they have worked tirelessly over the past couple of months trying to make changes. There are quite a few comments about cuts to the special ed programming. We've never stated that we're making cuts to special ed programming. What we did last week was we changed the director of special services from having a half-time, part-time, 2.5 days a week director of special services to having a full-time. So we actually doubled. And we made the change. We did not cut any services. Would you like to speak to our new position?
Sure. Well, let me assure all of you who spoke about special ed.
Can you use your microphone, please?
Sorry. And your students in the MD program, we love them. They walk through the halls, always waving. They're just phenomenal. We are not changing anything.
Caroline,
special
I'm
ed.
gonna ask Cody to pause for a second.
No, it's here. Oh, gosh.
Not like that.
That's just a second.
That's not this. We went from zero, we went from 0 to 160.
We're not making any changes to special education at all. The MD program is staying exactly the way it is. We never even discussed doing anything with MD, nothing. Staying exactly the way it is. What we did was we needed an additional time in special education for our students. And our special education population is going up, not down. So we looked at saying, well, could we find somebody full-time that would provide equal to or better services that we have now with just as much experience at a lesser cost? And the stars aligned and we found someone. His name is Mr. Larry Abramowitz. He was appointed last week. He is from Norway. He now has 803 IEPs that he manages, along with the nurse and a few other things. When we interviewed him, he said, I want to come to a much smaller place. He doesn't want the stress anymore. His references were impeccable. We checked those that he gave us and others that he did not. He's very, very excited to come. He wants to make this his home. And he has some ideas that he wants to implement in our special ed programs to hopefully make it better. But that's the only change we made. So we eliminated this supervisor of special education and the secretary. Now, I've said this a million times, I'm going to say it again. It had nothing to do with Laura Marchese's ability to do her job. It had nothing to do with her education, her experience, nothing. It came down to money. If we could hire a full-time, 5-day-a-week person that had equal to or more experience, why wouldn't we do that? And we're paying less money and giving our students more services. We were lucky that we found that. So Larry will be starting in May. And I met with teachers today and I said, I just hope you give him a fair chance and make him feel welcome when he comes in here. But again, I reiterate, nothing has changed in special ed. Not the MD program, nothing.
Some other comments regarding busing. Yeah, so just clarification that the school is not required to provide busing for students who are within 2 miles. Unfortunately, in Franklin, we aren't in an urban area. There aren't sidewalks. Kids can't safely ride their bikes to school. So while we did look at cutting busing or changing busing for the safety of the students, we decided that that was not the best option. Regarding the Class 3 officer, I'm not sure where the numbers came from. It's public knowledge. The contract for the Class 3 officer is $65,000. We don't pay benefits. It's $65,000. That's it. We don't have any employees here for $65,000. We pay benefits for everyone. So one Class 3 officer is approximately 2/3 of a teacher. The cost of an average teacher, it's not 2 teachers worth. It's okay.
You're shaking your head.
Okay. And another thing to following up on someone else's comment, yes, there were a lot of issues with finances a few years ago. I think every person on this board will admit that there was a mismanagement of funds. The administration decided to utilize COVID funds, one-time grants for recurring services. There's been a hard stop put to that. Mr. Kramer started here almost 2 years ago. He has worked very hard to decentralize the budget. Prior to him, it was not decentralized. It was just one big budget. And so when people ask questions about the budget, we can't really give you a great answer because it wasn't detailed as it should have been. So he has worked very hard. Cheryl has worked very hard at decentralizing the budget so that we can identify areas where we can save. we've been very successful in identifying areas. Do you want to speak to that at all, about the budget and going too decentralized and what the benefits are of that?
So I can speak to, from October and forward, work that Mr. Kramer and I have done. So what we have done is we've taken every section of the budget and tried to, and really have broke it down into the most in-depth analysis we could provide. So for example, when it came to transportation, him and I worked together by getting the state reports for this district, for transportation, and analyzing for out-of-district transportation, in-district transportation. Is there another model that could be used? Is there any efficiencies that could be gathered? So for example, every bus can hold 54 students. Were they filled, right? Because if not, then could we condense buses? Your answer is yes, all your buses are filled, by the way. So that's a good thing, right? So, I mean, maybe you could have condensed a bus, but you're not running buses right now at half capacity or anything less than 54. To identify out-of-district possible savings, is there any out-of-district bus routes that would the district want to write their own bid next year? Just to see what happens. Do you save any money, by converting to that process? And you could still go through the Hunterdon Educational Services Commission as well and see where you get the better price for your mandated out-of-district special ed transportation. So that's like an example of some of the analysis work that we've done to try to really break it down to student. Can we save any money? So we've really looked at all areas to try to at least give you the information to make informed decisions on this year and future planning of to do long-term financial planning.
Okay. So I guess we open up to the floor for discussion. If anyone has any comments regarding option 1 or option 2. Colleen? We can start there. If anyone has comments, you don't have to make any comments, but.
I will start the conversation by saying that this is me starting the conversation, not me giving all of my thoughts in one spiel. I've spent a lot of time looking at these two options, and I want the board to consider something that I've been chewing on and I've been really working through for the last week and more than last week, as we've been doing this budget for more than a year in the making. The roles that we have on the table that would be brought back if we went to over a 9% increase are roles that I fear and expect will be back up for discussion next year. I don't think that these are roles that we are saving for the long term in the school when we think about a 7.5% versus a 9.35% increase. And it's not in my desire set to cut the roles that would be cut along with a 7.55% increase. But if we're in the spirit of pull the Band-Aid off now, I'm going to pull the Band-Aid off with this group of people that has the amount of information that I have and say, no matter how many times I go back and forth with this decision, I'm not saving these positions for the next 5 years. I'm only saving them until this time next year, wherein we effectively don't have the 2 or 2.5%. What is our banked cap if we don't use it this year? It's about 2%.
$199,000.
What's our percent?
So it's roughly 2%.
Roughly 2%. We can either bank this cap for flexibility next year to, after 2 very difficult years, use that 2% to flex into what we hope will be a longer term strategy starting next year and continuing. Whether that's reality or not will be seen when we get into this point next year. Or we can use it all this year in hopes that we're saving roles. I know I asked for us to have this discussion, and I do want us to have this discussion tonight. It's not an easy discussion, but I did ask for us to have this. So I invited this into my world on a St. Patrick's Day night. Didn't know it was going to be St. Patrick's Day when I was thinking about this. But I would invite everybody to really think about whether or not that 2% is well spent this year in saving roles that we are going to cut next year. Unless we see a different path to next year, or whether we want to use that 2% to give ourselves the opportunity to ease ourselves into a better state in 26, 27 by using that 2% in 25, 26 as a deference. And I'll leave it at that. I was the starting person. Nobody should ever let me start a conversation because I'm over here getting very deep. But I really do want everyone to maybe consider those are the options that I have been contending with, and I'll look to my peers to share what they have been contending with.
Between the 2 resolutions.
Both options are tough, obviously. We don't want to see cuts get made. And I'm on the fence with both option. Part of me does want to, like many community members had already said, rip the Band-Aid off and, just use the cap. And next year we're back to the 2%. And, there's also a part of me that does want to kind of have that little safety net if we need to use it next year. I think either way, we're looking at cuts, whether it's this year, next year, or the year after. Inflation is not going to come down. The cost of everything is going to continue to rise. It's just how things go. And another community member brought up a really, really good point, and that is that this isn't just a school issue. This is a township issue. Builders don't want to come here. 7-acre lots, they're beautiful. I love it, but we do need more ratables. So whether that's businesses in town, more houses, more students, whatever the case is, this school is not sustainable the way that it is. I mean, that's the truth. So whether it's this year, the year after that, cuts are going to have to be made, and there's only so much tax dollars we can raise. So unless this township starts letting more people build, or we bring in businesses or something that we can actually get some tax money from, this is going to continue to happen. So I'm on the fence with the 2 options. I don't want to see anyone get cut at all. But it's going to happen. So that's it for now.
Can you hear? Okay, perfect. So I guess I've been on the board the longest, and over the last couple of years, I made a couple comments. A couple of years ago, we put 3% instead of 2% because we could, and that was a Band-Aid. It didn't do anything, right? Last year, we did 6%. I said, I don't want to be here again. This year, you guys asking again for 6 or 7%, and now we're asking for 9%, up to 9%. So, the way I'm thinking of it is 7 versus 9, they're both huge numbers, impactful. They both rip a Band-Aid off, if you want to call it that, but they're significant amounts of money. And that decision of what the levy is, we basically give that to the administration and say, here's the pot of money. You best find out how you want to run the school. We don't run the school. We make sure the school is well run. So it's up to the administration to figure out how to optimize the impact of the money that we do give you. set roles tonight or not. Decisions still have to be made. I think we have to be in a very strong mindset of cost savings regardless which kind of levy we go with. We have to figure out, I think Mr. Cecil said it, why we don't want to be here again, and do we have any confidence we're not going to be here again, right? There has to be cost savings, there has to be a longer term plan, whether that's finding shared services that actually work and actually save money and get us what we need, whether it's revisiting regionalization or reimagining what regionalization could mean. Maybe it's forming a coalition to help transportation costs if we join with other sending districts, whatever it is, we have to be creative about saving money on the things we can control. Some things we can't control. New special education students coming in, right? We have to give them, all the services that they need and that they deserve. But there are things we can do in cost savings that we should always, no matter what the levy is, we have to be in that kind of mindset from here on out because we can't maintain and we can't keep growing at the rate we are. So I've gone back and forth as well. A lot of good points were made in the community and by other board members, and it's not an easy position, but I feel like I'd rather give the administration the most we can to work with so that they can make the best decisions they need to make now. And then I really mean it. I don't want to be here again. Right? I don't want to be in this seat again next year. We won't have the money to do it. There will be none of this, but we have to make sure we optimize the money that we do have and make sure the students, the staff, the community, everybody gets the most well-run, best school that we can for the money we have.
I'll share a few thoughts. Can I speak into the mic? I've never been told I was too low. Can you hear me? And I'm sure the in-house people can hear me just fine. I'm from Philly, so my voice carries to the back of the room. Here's the thing, guys. I'm not looking at this as proportional savings to try keeping. Yes, of course we keep all the teachers the best we can. Every non-educational role gets thrown off the boat. Resource officers, secretaries, we're not voting on that, but I'm telling you my feelings. The only people we've had administration point the plane at a mountain and jump out. We've had BAs set up our books to almost destroy, and without Cheryl and Mark coming in here and saving it, this place would have already been closed, right? So when I'm talking about, it's not an option whether to do 7 or 9. The business model needs 9. It needs significantly more than that. And while we're talking about ripping off Band-Aids and stuff, the sheer mathematics of this place, right? We will be here again. I don't know why everyone's looking at it. Yes, the growth of our expenditures year over year are higher than 2%. That's a fact, right? And regionalization is not happening. We haven't discussed it at length while I was on the board, but I read the entire 90-page report. It's not happening. None of our community, none of our neighbors want to do it with us. Why? Because we're not invested. They are. They benefit from economies of scale. Any Union or Bethlehem taking us under their wing would cost them thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. There is no white knight coming. There is no solution. So I'm telling the community, no, this ain't the end of it. If you want this school to be great, I'm new here. I've only been here for 2 years. If you want this place to be great, invest in it. I've talked to BAs from other schools. I've spoken to superintendents, and I know 2 years I've been told how much everyone loves this place. But the professionals out there are saying that this institute is one of the least invested facilities and schools that they have ever seen. That's my opinion. I'm not blaming anyone or any board. Those are the realities of the situation. Yes, of course, everything goes. The only people staying with us are the teachers. There has been a rotating door of administration. We put out our grades. It wasn't the teachers that left. It was the curriculum supervisors. And in the past 6 months, 7 months, there's been an exodus of every person who was in the know about the finances of this institution. Gone. Just gone. And we have to listen to what Dr. Calabro is telling us. The board unanimously voted for her, and she's saying we need more money, and she's telling you guys, and Mark is here too, and we are filing extensions with the state to try keeping him here so he can finish the book repairs that he's doing. But I'm telling you guys, if the community don't think that next year we need an investment, we will. And everything that we're discussing today only affects the operating budget. It has nothing to do with the facilities. We need capital investments. Roofs collapse in, boilers die, and we have been working for 3 to 4 years with 6 to 10 air handlers that do not work. We've had H2M come in here and tell us that. We've had JCP&L come in here and tell us that. And I'm looking you dead in the eyes. We're going to need $10 million to fix that. All of them, if we do all of them. But if it ain't that, it's that. And if it ain't that, it's that. The school needs to be invested in, and anyone considering going lower does not understand the impact and the underlying business model problem that's going on with the school. Expenditures are growing too much. A few points that people have brought up. Yes, we have an MG program, but that amounts to button pushing in the way that we have combined it tons of different jobs. Instead of bringing in a new employee to handle that one role, we give it to a teacher who's already stressed. And then she's expected, or he's expected, excuse me, I'll check my personal biases, right? They are expected, yeah, fair enough. They are expected to do that work and then in the same time, be the librarian. Be this, be that, be that. So to the point of the community member who is saying, how do we save money? The school's business model over the past 10 years has been doing that. Letting go of staff and making one person juggle two things over and over and over again. The downstream result of the shared service is the fact that those services has grown proportional where we're not getting savings from them, but we're missing 50% of the boots on the ground. That had nothing to do with, I forget her name, the shared service supervisor. It had to do, switching that out had to do with ensuring that our rear admiral was on the ship 5 days a week. Not at another school doing a great job, not just in this school doing a great job, 5 days a week, one of the most important people we have. Same goes with, and Caroline, you know these better than me. Same goes with the custodian staff, same goes with every shared service. And I would present to everyone here, we wouldn't be in this situation if our superintendent wasn't a shared service and his goal was on the top achieving school. Union kept going up and we kept going down in all of our grades. I also and I'll finish up on this. I have no attachment to this school. I'm brand new. I honestly, up until 2 months ago, I didn't even know the address of the place. My kids are here and I'm about to have 4 of them. I have a very large house. I moved here under the promise that this is a 9 out of 10 school. That's how it was sold to me. That's how I convinced my wife to move out of the house that she grew up in to come here. So if that's the goal, then let's keep fighting and let's make this place great. Let's keep every teacher we possibly can. Let's raise the levy because we are a board of education, right? So we fight and keep as many teachers as humanly possible. The service jobs have to go. If we have to get rid of, what are the other things that were on it? If we have to get rid of summer school, then we get rid of summer school, fine. But I'm telling you, we're not just getting rid of interventionalists. We're shutting down the interventionalist department. And I've been reading memos from inside the school that say, oh, we're not shutting down the interventionalist department. Because again, guys, you're shaking your head, right? But intervention, I apologize, interventionist. Again, I'm just some Yahoo from Philly. I'm not specializing in, I don't specialize in education. I specialize in finance. And I'm just saying this business model is the same as JCPenney's in 1997. Expenditures are growing past our ability to make revenue, to Mr. Jim's point over there. So yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else. No. At the end of this, I also don't believe, I go back to the fact that you have to fix the underlying business model of the surplus expenditures. It's not just saving teachers, it's saving the school. I've been saying it since I got on the board 3 months ago. Invest heavy in this school or start shutting it down. It's as simple as that. And I don't feel like we're voting on the budget for next year. I feel as though we're voting on the path of this institution for the next 10 years. And the teachers deserve to know that everything, we'll start shutting off the lights on Fridays before we start releasing these teachers. That's my point. I'm voting 9%. If I could vote for 15%, I would, because the business model requires that type of, again, I hear what I'm saying. I pay the taxes too here, guys, but I'm trying to solve your underlying business model problems. This is how the school was built. This is how the business of the school was laid out, probably before any of us were born. And now it's time to pay the piper because expenditures are going through the roof. And you guys feel it too. You know your insurance has gone up. You know your electric bill has gone up. Times that by 10 and you got the school. Anyone else? Yeah. Please, Mark.
No problem. So kind of the opposite.
Mark.
Kind of the opposite of Matt. I did grow up in this area. I've been in this area my entire life, with the exception of like 1 year. I lived in Virginia, but I went to Clinton Public as a kid. Clinton Public at that time was just as small as this school, if not smaller. We were the smallest school around. That has since changed drastically. But when I went to Clinton Public and then went on to North Hunterdon, Pittstown was the place I wanted to live. And that goes back to when I was able to drive and come visit my friends in Pittstown. I said, this is a pretty great place. A little more elbow room out here. Your neighbors aren't so close to you. You can make a little more noise, which is important to my family. So we came out here. And I always knew Franklin Township because coincidentally, most of my best friends ended up coming from Franklin Township. But a couple things I just wanted to kind of put out there. Number one is that the term that we hear more often than anything else in these meetings is people telling us to think outside the box. The box is gone. The box was thrown out a long time ago. And not only was the box thrown out, but we understand the emotion behind every decision we make. It is not easy. We, like Matt said, if I had 15%, hallelujah, everyone's hired. That's great, but we just don't have that option. So the conversations we have around cuts that we make or changes that we make are intense, especially in particular on the finance committee, because we are going directly to Dr. Calabro and Mark and saying, guys, what can we do? Like I always ask the question, what will have the most educational impact of the scenarios that we're talking about here? Everyone is emotional in those meetings. They're not happy meetings. I think we would all agree. They're really tough meetings. So, thinking outside the box, I understand what you're saying. I can assure you we are thinking outside the box and we are leaning on the experts, which is not us. It's Dr. Calabro and Mark in terms of what sort of creative solutions can be drawn. I want to use the example of the recent decision with the special ed coordinator, and I hope I'm saying that title correctly. Was that the correct title for supervisor? Thank you. I think from a financial standpoint, we got the letters. We understood the emotion behind it. We read them all. But it was a very tough decision. But from a financial standpoint, when we understood the candidate that was coming and we understood what was at stake in terms of getting someone here 5 days a week at a equivalent cost, it was a no-brainer for us. And those are the kind of decisions that they are not easy. We understand that they have impact, but they, in a lot of cases, just have to be done because we have so little to work with. One other thing I want to just point out, on most of our biggest costs is we're looking at 25% year-over-year increase from last year to this year. It's untenable to try and think that we could say anywhere near 2% with a 25% year-over-year increase. And then the shared services, yes, we hear you on the shared services because obviously that's a very logical path to saving some money. But what we have found and has been said tonight is some of our prior shared services agreements and maybe the employees that, again, don't want to name any specific employees, but maybe those services, Franklin was not getting our fair share. And that's really what our decision here is about. And we wanted to, in light of our test scores and in light of performance, and in light of preserving this beautiful school that we have, those shared services needed to be looked at very closely. They are very complex and the situations behind them are very complex. If we're not getting our fair share out of those agreements, there's no reason for us to stay in them. And that's both financial and boots on the ground. And we are seeing that, we are not getting what we're paying for. We're paying 50%, but we're not getting 50% of services. We have to look at those. We will continue to look at them. We will continue to look at things like regionalization. We are stuck in a very tough position. I'm not trying to get anyone to feel bad for us up here, because I think we all signed up for this and we knew what we were getting into, especially if you ran in the last few years. But the only other thing that I'll mention as far as all this goes is I appreciate that you're all here tonight, because I have to say that week or month by month, there's a handful of people here at every meeting, and that's fine. And I have no idea how many people are online. That's great. But there's a lot that goes on here. So what I think ends up happening to a lot of us is we get someone in town that comes to us and says, oh, 9.5%, what, are you out of your mind? No, we're not out of our mind. It's a really tough situation. Unless you understand all that background, it's really hard for me to explain it to you in a 2-minute conversation on a soccer field. So I do appreciate you all coming here. I came here at a budget meeting. It was my first board meeting. That was 4 years ago. And it really got me interested, because I said, okay, I see what's going on. We have some challenging circumstances here. And that's how I ended up on the school board. So please keep coming back. We love your feedback. We take it all very seriously. I'm a person that likes to operate with a big heart, kindness first. And I hear every single person that spoke tonight. I appreciate you having the guts to go up there and say your piece. And that does go in the database. And that is a factor in every decision that I make personally as a school board member. So that's the extent of what I wanted to say.
So I grew up in a small town and had combined classes. We didn't have all the specials that we have here at Franklin, and I'm a huge advocate of truly understanding special education and all that goes into it. There is a lot, whether it's inclusive in the general ed classroom, whether it's, pull out, whether it's, the MD room. I've always admired how inclusive Franklin Township is. And so for the parents who are here from out of district, I think it is incredible that that their children are able to still attend a public school, and how cool that we have that to offer. So again, if I don't want to pay taxes, I hate taxes, like a lot said. But I agree that there's a lot of investing into the school. And I really did like what Ethan's mom had shared about, really promoting some of these services that we offer in the MD room and everything. There's so many, and like another parent said, behavior is a form of communication. I'm also a BCBA, so I'm very familiar with all these things, and I appreciate that so much. So that's all I'm going to say. It's tough options, but that's what we're here to do.
I would like to highlight something that Jim said. I know, Jim, you can take this to the bank. I feel like Colleen said she agreed with Jim. Come on. I do want to highlight something that Jim called out, which is this is not just a school issue. This is a township issue. And I feel like that was a very powerful but very concise statement that you made. And I want to call it out because it's true. This is not a school issue in and of itself. When we think about the entirety of how our township is structured, where our tax revenues are derived from, this is bigger than the people who are living in the homes that we have today. It doesn't mean that you have to agree that we bring in massive amounts of big industry and change the entire structure of how Franklin Township currently is. But this is bigger than just the school, and this is something that we should be bringing to the township. Something that the township, at each and every person in this room, if you want to continue to bring action, I would recommend that you do bring it to the land use board, to the township committee, to the spaces that are larger than just this little tiny school, because there are other ways to derive revenue that don't involve us. I know it feels like we're just sucking you dry. I know it feels that way. And we are taxpayers in this same township. We're sucking ourselves dry. So as much as Jim is over here like, wow, Colleen said thumbs up for a Jim thing. I do really honestly want to highlight that statement because it is really powerful and really important. This is bigger than the school. This is the entire township coming together in a way that needs to extend past this one meeting, one time a year. The more that we can do as a township in larger forums, and the more that we're willing to put our time and energy in outside of one meeting a year, that in and of itself is a way for us to contribute to the way that this township looks in 10 years from now. And I know there are people in this room that have been doing this for decades and are like, Colleen said this and she thinks that she just made this up today. I know that I didn't just make this up today. I know I didn't just enlighten half the room. But for anybody that did not think of it in the way that Jim described it, I just wanted to highlight that. So.
If I can add color to that, right? And I don't know
Please
if
do.
everyone in the township knows it, and I'm not a member, I'm not an officer of the township, we just work for the board. But when it comes to the funding of this township, it's three options: property tax, a Walmart, and a hotel. That's the game, guys. That's how the community was designed. We wrapped ourselves in a blanket of forest and made it all preserve land, and the rest of it is farm country. It's 1,500 houses fund this school. And when we talk about the reality of the nature of the financing of stuff, no, we can't promise this is the end of it, because we can do all of this to try fixing the underlying business model. And we said it at a previous meeting, 2 kids with special needs show up here requiring transportation and on hundreds of thousands of dollars. And as long as I'm on the board, they get it. It's as simple as that. But the business model is reversed back immediately again, because every dollar that we just put down to close out the surplus and fund every teacher, right back out the door, the whole thing is back to where it was. Just the community needs to understand that. And rather than addressing this like the school's constantly on the financial cliff and about to fall off the side of it, we all have to go, yeah, that's the cost of paradise. The school's on an island. There is nowhere else to go. We keep on saying that maybe we can get savings from JCP&L helping us with the air handlers. Maybe, again, all of those. So again, everyone just has to be super realistic about the task at hand here. And the patient will constantly have to be worked on moving forward. But doctor, I'm telling you, doctor will not succeed. You heard it, whoever was at the meeting here last week, Mark said that we wouldn't be able to keep this business going at 4%. If you were listening to the last meeting, now we're saying 9% in order to give this place a fighting chance. And if you like it, if you love the school, and everyone here says they love the tiny little school in the middle of town, then this should be the first of many big capital investments that we put into this. So the school becomes the crown jewel of the neighborhood, rather than our God burden, like we're treating it like a redheaded cousin. Because and the people everyone loves it. Everyone here wants to see this place succeed. It doesn't take, that won't happen by people saying, that won't happen by platitudes. That happens with capital and investments and long-term hires and listening to what Dr. Calabro and what Mark has been telling us. Invest or die. Please.
The community has supported us. They passed the referendum. I think largely they are saying we support this tax levy. I'm hearing a lot of the parents, whatever, maybe not as much as the community. I don't think the community isn't behind us. My bigger concern is what you say. We do this huge tax levy. Next year, we can only do 2%. What happens to us? I mean, we're not unique in that, but that's why I said ongoing looks and cuts, not to staff only, but to everything, a holistic approach and looking and seeing where can we find efficiencies and sharing. It's going to have to be like an all hands on deck from here on out because the expenditures are not going to be 2% and we are going to be capped at 2%. And I think your plea, right, I just want to say it's fine, but I think I'm sensing the community is very supportive and we are appreciative the referendum was passed and for the great feedback in the comments, but we are always, doom and gloom going forward. And well, that's what I'm hearing for you. So I'm just saying we have to just be very critical at everything we spend and maybe the decentralized budget helps and maybe the corporate sponsorships helps and maybe we look at, ways to do more sharing in different kinds of ways, but it has to be an ongoing continuous improvement.
Everything you're saying is absolutely. Yeah. The only counter I'd say is I'm not being doom and gloom. I'm being realistic. Because if we're running these books of a school or a company, you can't do it year to year. We need to be anticipating 5 to 7 years out. And also to your point, we won't be able to make massive cuts. We can make savings. We can come up with saving plans, but those are incremental percentages, not, if you get what I'm saying, we can have a small effect on it, but the reality of it is that a lot of it is uncontrollable growth. That would be my counter to what you're saying, but you're absolutely, I do think the community is with us. Everyone who's spoken here did not say not to do what we're discussing to do. What I'm talking about is over the past 12, 15 years, the school's levy hasn't grown proportional to the overall need that we're currently in now.
Right, but just to be fair to older, boards from 5 to 10 years ago, they were only allowed to 2% cap. They did not have, and I had that asterisk for a purpose so that you could see. They didn't have the ability to do it for 5 years. We had like a 2%, right, cap from, I had you asked. But there was a number of years, at least 4 or 5 years, where we couldn't go over 2%. Then we got some leeways, and we used some of it last year. We used a little bit the year before, but those are, maybe you get it, right? That's not for certain.
I don't sound like I'm being
No,
critical of past boards. I'm just talking about the reality of the growth over the past 12 is not proportional to the tax levies that are raised.
For
And
sure.
those could have been addressed by putting referendums out to the community. I'm not,
but
again, I'm
for
not
sure.
saying that anyone did anything wrong. I'm saying this is the situation now, and this is the situation over the next 4 to 5 years. If Mark was, I'm not going to put it on you because I don't know you, but go ahead, Doctor.
Earlier about Mark not being here, it almost sounded like he didn't want to be here because he's sick. He texted me last night. He said, I'm going to do my best to get here. He texted me this morning and he said, I'm still in bed. And he said, what did he say? He said to me, I feel so bad that I can't be there. And I said, no, you need to make sure that you stay home and that you recover from whatever he has. Cheryl was working with Mark, so she knew the numbers and so on. And so we had Cheryl come to the meeting because Mark was unable to be here.
I'll channel Mark right now. Invest in the school. That's what our BA is telling us. That's what our superintendent's telling us.
Everybody? Good? Okay, I want to say one thing. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm sure everyone's pretty aware of this, but just to reiterate, this is not a problem that's unique to Franklin. We have our own kind of nuances towards the problem, but this is not a unique problem. I would just encourage everyone to check out what's happened in Flemington, Merton, because to me, that is devastating. Absolutely devastating. We don't want to go down that road. So I would just say that. The other thing I will say as a real estate professional is there is no lack of demand for people to move to Pittstown. In fact, it is off the charts. There's not enough houses to go around. That's been that way for many years because they like all the things we're talking about that are great about this town, but it's also the school. The perception is that this is a great school. As a real estate professional, they don't know I'm a board member. I can't comment on the quality of school. They have to go to other resources. There's a lot of resources out there. If you just Google school ratings, they all rate Franklin very high, and that is a huge part of it. Losing that would be much more devastating than an incremental increase in taxes long term.
And also, just to add color to what he's saying, I said it. When it comes to Raritan and Flemington, scaled down to our size, they asked for a, and you guys might know this better than me, $3.5 million to keep everything, right? If that was scaled down to our size, let's say they have 3,000 students and we have 300, that would mean we need $350,000 to keep everything. Our proportional need, our need is actually 2.7 times to 3 times that, and we still have to cut staff in order to balance budget. So referencing Raritan's a good data point, right? But the reality of the nature of what we're facing is 3 times greater that's scaled down to our size. My opinion, I'm not gonna, if you wanna sit down, I'll do math. We'll do a spreadsheet together to explain it, but I'm just talking simple math. We are worse off than they are, and they lost that vote. So we gotta start fighting for funding here. You got an outstanding point.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to ask for a motion by someone to approve either A or B, someone who is,
B.
okay. Need 1 second?
Motion to approve A.
Okay, well, we have the motion. We have the motion for B, which is the 9%. We have a second from Allison.
We have to vote on that.
Yeah, we have to vote on this one.
Okay, we're doing a roll call on option B. Mrs. Cummings?
I'm sorry, we're doing a roll call on option B, which is the 7.
B is the 9.
B is the 9%.
B is the larger.
On 9.
Yes.
Okay.
No,
No?
no.
Mrs. Frondorf?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano?
This is the 9?
Yes.
9.
Okay.
What was your vote? I'm sorry. Oh, he's 19.
Yes.
Mrs. Luciano?
Yes.
Mr. Metz?
Yes.
Mr. Norton?
Of course, yes.
Mrs. LaQuinca?
Yes.
Motion passes at the 9%.
Thank you.
I do want to say something real quick. This has been a financial discussion, and we've been having financial discussions. We've been running numbers. You have to look at, okay, where's the bleeding coming from? What changed? You have to factor all these things in. We ran the numbers in the past 5 years. Our expenses have gone up $3.5 million. One of the big glaring numbers from that was special ed. It's almost half of the increase. We love our special ed students. We love our special ed program. We are going to continue to invest in it. We are not targeting special ed. We are not trying to decrease it. The reason that special ed keeps coming up is because of the costs that are associated with it, the vast majority of which are completely beyond our control. It's out of district, private tuition, as one of the parents mentioned. It's the out of district transportation and the nurse on the transportation vehicle. That's why the special ed funding and the numbers have kept coming up. It is nothing against the students. We love the special ed students. We did not mean to target them in any way. I just want to make it clear that this board completely supports programming for all of our students, and we look forward to continuing what appears to be an incredible special ed program. Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on. For personnel, can I get a motion to approve A through F? Can I get a second? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Cummins?
Yes.
Mrs. Frondorf?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano?
Yes.
Mrs. Luciano?
Yes.
Mr. Metz?
Yes.
Mr. Norton? Mrs. Litwinko?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Public comment. All comments should be directed to the board president. The board will not respond to complaints from and to school personnel unless the chain of command has been followed without satisfaction. Furthermore, the board cannot respond to any complaints from the public directed at any district employee or student, as the board must protect each employee's and each student's right to privacy. Those wishing to share comments during this portion of the meeting are asked to sign the register at the podium and state their name, place of residence, and group affiliation if applicable. Public comment should be concise and to the point and not contain abusive, defamatory, or obscene language. Each speaker will be given up to 3 minutes. Any public comment?
Elizabeth Basile, 16 Upper Kingtown. Okay, I'm not stealing. Okay, I just have a few quick things to ask if you thought about or even have any information about. I know the school has a solar field. I've done a lot of research. I'm just curious, it comes up with a land lease. Curious if there's any revenue there. I know there was a big plan in the past, but curious what's happening with that. Regarding the land use board, I understand the concept, build more, grow businesses. You should start attending the land use board meetings because there's a lot of good information there. One of the big things they're trying to do is to protect the aquifer, because if we lose the clean water, there goes your property value. And the last thing is, one more thing. The Board of Ed president spoke about the mismanagement of funds over the last few years. I'm just curious as to who and what is going to be put in place for oversight of the financial management going forward, because when Mark Kramer leaves or Dr. Calabro or the finance committee changes, who's looking over the shoulder? Because I'm reading the audits to see what's happening year to year, and I'm just a layperson, so I'm hoping that someone has that job. Thank you.
Hi guys, sorry I'm back. Do you need me to sign in again? Listen, the only thing that I wanted to say to you guys is, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that you guys are talking about not cutting special services, but you guys need to know special education parents are fickle. And here's the deal, you're a BCBA. What you have here, and you guys need to be very, very understanding of this, what you have here with parents coming here and sticking up for the special education department does not happen in other school districts. To watch you guys make a mistake, okay, with changing your staff in special education, watching it is so frustrating because you guys are going backwards. You're making archaic decisions that are going to ruin this program. And the fact is that you can talk about having somebody new, you can talk about bringing somebody back in, but the fact is that this program has what it has because it has because of who it has as the director. You guys, this program it's taken this long for it to finally gain momentum, right? It's taken this long for you to now have all these tuition kids in place. These kids are not going to stay. They're not going to stay if you guys change your administration. And I know that might already be a done deal, but keep in mind that the reputation of who is running this program is what makes it what it is. And you guys can talk about quantity over quality as much as you want, but the fact is that no matter how much Laura Marchese is here or is not here, she is doing a great job, as evidenced by the parents who are here supporting this program. Just want to let you know.
Hello. Two follow-ups. One, I misspoke about the talented and gifted. I meant to say more resources. Apologies to any teachers, anyone I expected or disrespected. Sorry. Number two, I realized I did not do the research, but people are talking about ripping the Band-Aid off. Probably needs like a hashtag millennial social media thing. But on a realistic standpoint, you guys are talking about it. I know you guys can only go to the 9 point whatever. Is there something that you can comment on that maybe a referendum where next year you come in and to the point you say it's 15.4%, but then we're not going to raise for 4 years? And it sounds like the community might be able to get behind that of some sort. So everyone's talking about the year to year. You guys all talked about thinking 4 or 5 years out. Maybe come up with a plan, and it might get shot down, it might not, but you guys heard from people without kids, people with kids. It seems like people want to get behind this school and understand how valuable that we don't have any other revenue resources, and how valuable it is to the 7-acre lots, how valuable it is to home values and our little slice of, little slice of Iowa on the East Coast. So maybe that's something that you guys could present to the public at some point. I don't know the details behind this, but come up with a really rip the Band-Aid off, but then cauterize it for 4 to 5 years and say it's going to be 2% for the next 4 years, but here's the 14.5, 17.6, whatever it may be, to at least educate the public, and you might be able to get surprise support behind it. That's it.
Okay, noteworthy dates. Next meeting will be April 14th, and note that the May meeting has been rescheduled from May 12th to May 5th. And if I can get a motion to adjourn. Allison, second? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Have a good evening.